Hello there, fellow truth seekers. Doug Foster coming to you again. Today I want to talk about knowledge. And there is a host of scriptures, hundreds of scriptures about knowledge, but I picked out a few selective verses that I think are pertinent and that will, give us an emphasis on the own knowledge, and that wisdom goes with it. And wisdom is the appropriate use of the knowledge. We can have knowledge, but it can be foolishness. Look at the world's knowledge. They caught up in their own craftiness. And their knowledge comes to nothing. It's vanity. So I'm going to start with probably the number one scripture about knowledge. It's in Proverbs. Let me find it here. All right, here we go. The fear of the Lord, this is Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And I got another one that kind of probably goes along with that. So this is Psalm 53, verse 1 through 3. The fool has said in his heart, there is no Elohim, no God. Corrupt are they, and have done abominable iniquity. There is none that doeth good. Elohim looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand, that did seek Elohim. Every one of them is gone back. They are altogether become filthy. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Okay, he's basically he's laying out, because we don't seek his wisdom and knowledge, that, basically we become abominable. We become filth, because, his knowledge is the knowledge that we should be seeking. Because if you look at man's knowledge and the knowledge that we have received from the fallen ones, forbidden knowledge, look at the shape of the world that we have. And what's, going on in the world, how corrupted and, just how we've pretty much just about destroyed it. And it grows, more horrific all the time. And of course, it can only lead to total destruction, because they refuse this knowledge of the Father, and they choose to follow the knowledge of these fallen ones, which their agenda is to destroy us. They really don't care, about this world or anything else. Their end game is, our destruction, and because they know that their destruction's coming, and so they just want to take out everything that Elohim ever created, just out of spite. But let me see here. I got some more verses here I want to go over. Let's see. Psalm 144. chapter Psalm 144, verse 3. What, Yahweh, what is man that thou takest knowledge of him, or the son of man that thou makest account of him? In verse 4, man is like to vanity. His days are as a shadow that passeth away. I mean, what are we that he would even be mindful of us? That he would even give us notice. He has a purpose for us. I mean, he created us for a purpose. And that was to fellowship with him, and to be sons to him, and sons and daughters to him, but we refuse his knowledge, as a matter of course. I'm not saying everybody, because he, from the beginning, after man fell, he pretty much said, okay, you wouldn't obey me, you wouldn't, listen to me, you want to listen to these fallen ones. Okay, well, I'm just going to sit here and just watch you. You pretty much do whatever you want, and you're going to have to learn what the consequences of going your own way is. Everything I've done for good. I created this paradise, that is good, and created these creatures and stuff that are good, and I created you, and you, were good, until, iniquity was found in you. He basically let man kind of go on, and I've talked about it before, about the watchers coming down here and mating with human women, trying to corrupt humankind, and it got so bad that people began to cry out, to the Father, and so then he had to intervene against those watchers and those Nephilim giants, because they were decimating them, and so he, basically said, the end of man has come before me. I'm numbering your days at 120 years. You got 120 years, and I'm going to destroy all flesh. And so, but he found one man that had not been corrupted, and that had actually sought righteousness, and that was Noah. He wanted to do right. Of course, he had the fallen nature, just like we all do, that he inherited from Adam. But he had a desire to do what was right. And, and he also, had heard, his grandfather, actually Noah's great-grandfather, Enoch, he, had, told them, and give them books, because Enoch was described, he wrote down all this stuff and told them, to fear Elohim and to, reverence him and honor him and to do his laws and commands. They did have, because, what was one of the things that the Father did for what Cain did was, told them they, had to sacrifice animals to cover up their sin. The blood of those animals was, it was a type. It was to get it across to them that that the sin could only be remitted by the shedding of innocent blood. And so. And it was a type of the Messiah coming. And so, and again, it was because they, most of humankind rejected the true knowledge. The knowledge of good. They readily grabbed on to the knowledge of evil. And that was the thing about the partaking of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And people, oh, they eat the apple. Well, we don't know what it was. It doesn't say what kind of tree it was, what kind of fruit it was, but and it was sort of symbolic. But I believe it also, there was probably something in that fruit that triggered something in a human's brain that opened their eyes to the difference between good and evil. Before that, they didn't know anything about the difference. So whenever they done anything, there was no sin there because they didn't know it. So once their eyes were opened to where they could know the difference, then it becomes sin, because now they know. But they, as it is today, people always tend to want to go towards the evil knowledge and away from the righteous knowledge. And so you see what we have going on in the world right now. I mean, it's insanity. They pushing everything wicked and evil that you can think of. And so, let's see here. All right, let's go to Psalm. Okay, 119. Psalm 119, 66. This is what, this was probably a psalm, I think, this was a psalm of Aleph. Teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I have believed thy commandments. Okay, he's offered us, knowledge, and it begins, of course, with fearing him, and then with keeping his commandments, and not just, knowing his commandments, but loving them and keeping them. That in itself is knowledge. His commandments are knowledge. And so he's given them, to us. And this was, given to the Hebrew people. They were supposed to be the nation that would reveal to the rest of the nations the righteous knowledge of Elohim. The true knowledge. But of course, like all human beings, they kept drifting out. They would get a righteous leader, or up until King Saul, Yahuwah Elohim was their king and ruled over them through judges, but they rejected that. They saw these nations around them that had kings ruling over them, and they was like, we want a man to rule over us. And of course, Samuel, he was distraught about it. I mean, it really made him mad, but it hurt him too. And the father said, well, why are you distraught about it and weeping about it? Because it ain't you they rejected, it's me. They rejected me, and they want a man to rule over them. So give them what they want, and listen to all that they say, and give them, and I will show you who you will, anoint. And, told him how to find him and all, and it becomes Saul. But then Saul, didn't obey. He was told to do something, and he didn't do it. He didn't obey what the father had told him to do, and because of it, the kingship was taken away from him and his bloodline, the Benjamites. It would have been his bloodline, the Benjamites, would have been the lineage of the Messiah, if they had kept his, if he'd kept his word, but he didn't, and so it went to Judah, David, and David was a righteous man, from his youth. The scripture says he was a man after Elohim's own heart. So he because he had the desire, in his heart to do the right thing, and he had, and he was fearless. And he loved the knowledge of Elohim. You see, and that is, and it started with his fear of Elohim and the understanding that he was omnipotent, he was all powerful. But people lose sight of that, and they just Satan has so deceived them and blinded them to that fact that they fear Satan and don't fear him. And it should be the other way around, But that's because people are physical beings. We're physical beings, and we're spiritual beings. We're both. And, people fear death. And so Satan uses that fear and intimidation, to make people fear him and his minions. And that's, how he works that. Because people, again, they don't know what's going to happen when they die, so they're afraid. But, if you are in Yahushua, then you won't have that fear of death, because he takes the sting of death away. And, because that he is the first fruits of the resurrection. And that he rose from the dead. So you can be resurrected. You can be raised from the dead. And if you know that and you believe it, then you will. But as people who are fearful and that don't have belief, that are the ones that claw, they claw and scrape and do everything they can to try to get one more minute of life. They'll go and let doctors do all kinds of crazy stuff to them, just to live another day, so that's what happens when you don't have the relationship with the Father and the Son. You are going to have that fear, and he don't want us to have that. He wants us to have peace, and if we believe and trust in him, then he'll give us that peace, and we won't have that fear of death. All right, here we are at, this is number 4 in my verses about knowledge. It says, and this is in Proverbs chapter 2, verse 5 through 6. It says, "Then shalt thou understand the fear of Yahuwah, and find the knowledge of Elohim. For Yahuwah giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding." Okay, and people will say, and here's a kind of a parallel scripture that goes with that. "The heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge, but the mouth of fools feedeth on foolishness." If we have this knowledge that he is, if we have understanding, the fear of Yahweh, and find the knowledge of Elohim, because he gives it to us. He gives us, he will give us wisdom, and he will give us knowledge and understanding. But first it begins with fearing him. When you fear him, because Christ said, "Don't fear that which can destroy the body, but fear that which can destroy both the body and the soul in hellfire," or in the lake of fire. And that ought to come, all Satan can do is destroy your body. He has no power over your soul or your spirit. He just doesn't. And, so, that's why Yahushua said, Christ said, don't fear what some, entity or whatever can do to your body. But fear that which can destroy both your body and your soul. And then it's saying here, the heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge, but the mouth of fools feedeth on foolishness. I mean, a fool will just continue to absorb foolishness and to listen to foolishness rather than listening to the voice of the Ruach that gives us knowledge, that leads us to knowledge, that leads us to truth. These people that don't have understanding, they won't listen to it. They won't hear it. The only thing they're going to hear is foolishness, the knowledge of and wisdom of men. And of course, that is the road to destruction. Let's see here. Verse 5. All right. We'll go to the book of Job here. And this is chapter 34, verse 2 and 3. Hear my words, O ye wise men, and give ear unto me, ye that have knowledge. For the ear trieth words as the mouth tasteth meat. Okay, he's saying here to hear his words if you have wisdom. And if you have knowledge. If you really have received this wisdom and knowledge that he's given us, but we have to want it and we have to seek it. Then he says you will hear his words. You hear his words if you're wise and you have knowledge. And this is his words. This is it. But you have to want it and you have to seek it. And if he's saying if you're wise and you have knowledge, then you will hear his words. This right here. And let's see, I got another verse here, 1 Samuel. If I got it, here we go, 1 Samuel, and it is chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. Talk no more so exceeding proudly. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. For Yahweh is a Elohim of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. Okay, so what he's telling us here is, don't be proud and arrogant through our own knowledge and wisdom. What we, humans believe to be wisdom and knowledge, like our so-called science, falsely so-called, which is just a mechanism for deceiving, especially today. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that that there isn't true science, because there is. The Father, used, and the Scriptures is full of, things that are scientifically based on empirical, what they call the empirical system, which is where you do experiments to prove what your hypothesis is. If you have a hypothesis, and you want to prove it out, well, you do it through experimentation. You set up an experiment, and if it's true, then that experiment should be repeatable. In other words, if I had done this experiment and I found it to be so, then you should be able to set up the same experiment and get the same result. That's the empirical system. Well, today, everything is done mathematically. And of course, you can make math say anything. It's like Chuck Missler says, if you torture the data enough, it'll confess to anything. So these people, these so-called science, everything's math. And most of it, when it comes to cosmology and stuff like that, it was like, oh yeah, everything was created through a big bang. This little singularity exploded and produced everything. Okay, well, were you there when that happened? Can you go and prove that? But they teach it as it's being an absolute fact. But yet, and we can't even get off of this earth. We can't even get off of here. So what makes these people think they're going to go way off yonder somewhere? It's all part of the scientism. That's, to me, that's separate from science. It's a religion. I mean, they've made it into a religion. And, nothing that they do, same thing with the evolution, which all really, evolution and the age of the earth and, all that kind of stuff came out of heliocentric cosmology, Copernicus. Because once they said, oh yeah, we're just one little speck of ball, little tiny marble here floating around the sun, and in one, just one quadrant of the Milky Way galaxy, and it's one of tens of billions of galaxies with, each with, maybe trillions of stars in it, and these vast distances, all that stuff. Well, then that basically, and then they come out with evolution and the geological order of the earth and all that stuff. Well, that pretty much threw Genesis completely out now, didn't it? So, you can see how this religion of science, the scientism, even though, people, for example, Michelson Morley, they went way up into the stratosphere, with a balloon, and they done measurements to see if the earth was moving. And they done these experiments over and over and over and over again, and not just them, but other people. And they, could not detect any movement in the earth. Oh, they could see the sun and the moon and the stars moving around. But the earth itself, they never could. So to try and, repudiate their findings, they come out with Einstein. Okay, and he done all this fancy math, and, come up with all these, insane theories, relativity, general relativity and special relativity and all that stuff, and put it out there. And there was a man who was contemporaneous to Einstein. His name was Nikola Tesla. Now, he was a true scientist, okay? Now, he was kind of an eccentric man, and I think he was messing with stuff he shouldn't have been, as far as channeling or listening to these entities. But he told Einstein that his stuff was, crazy. It was foolishness. And they even asked Einstein one time, they said, who's the smartest man in the world? He says, I don't know. You need to go ask Nikola Tesla. So that tells you something there. He had a lot of respect for Tesla because, everything that we take for granted today, electricity and all that stuff, he single-handedly created it all. Three-phase power system, all that stuff. Motors, transformers, just all of it. He created all of it. And radio, it wasn't Marconi, it was Tesla. And he had an understanding about the nature of how it really was, about the aether and all, so he had real knowledge. And he's, told, hey, this, y'all are way off base here. You're going way away from where it really is, what's really going on, and what really everything is. And so, of course, they, their religion, their scientism, just, and that's only because it's driven by demonic and satanic entities. I mean, they're the ones that are putting it in these people's heads. And again, too, because the people themselves have a hatred of Elohim, because they have things that they want to do that's contrary to his law and to his ways. And so they resent it. They resent it that he has laws that forbid doing that stuff, and his ways forbid it. So they have this hatred of him, because they want to do these things. The lust of the flesh, and I'm not just talking about sexual lust. I'm talking about just lust in general, because the lust is wanting, going after anything with passion. And so, lust of money, lust of, flesh, lust of food, lust of, anything that you lust after physically. And so that's why these people, are willing to go out there and put out this crazy stuff and listen to these voices that are telling them this. And it really, I believe, is part of a bigger deception that is setting people up for believing that when these entities start showing up, that they're aliens or something, and they're not. They're fallen malachim, but if people realize that, and knew the truth that these are fallen angels or malachim. That have rebelled against the Most High, then they wouldn't receive them when they show up. But if you can plant this, and this goes way back. I mean, it goes all the way back even before, Copernicus. I mean, Pythagoras, and even on beyond that to the Mesopotamians. The Anunnaki and all that stuff. Telling them, yeah, we come here, a million years ago, and we took an ape that was here, and we took our DNA, and we mixed it with them, and we made y'all, and you're like the third generation or something. We made several generations before you, and then we made you, and now we've come back to give you an upgrade, and bring in a golden age and all that stuff. Well, that's the same kind of lie that was going on before the flood. That they were perpetuating, because they back then they began to worship them too, as gods or whatever, and creators and stuff like that, so it's just a repeat of that. That's why, the scripture says, I tell you the end from the beginning. If you go back to the beginning and look at what was going on there, you can understand what's going to be happening at the end. And Yahushua said the same thing. He said, that as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the return of the Son of Man. And that's what it's talking about. I mean, all this stuff's it's going to be a repeat of what was going on back then. And, and unfortunately, people are going to be deceived into believing a lot of it and falling into it. But when they realize the truth, it'll be too late for a lot of them. Okay, now let's get into Hosea. Hosea, chapter 4, verse 6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy Elohim. I will also forget thy children. Now, he was talking to the people of Israel, but this is applicable to all of us, that if you reject his knowledge and his truth, then, destruction is going to come on you. That's why it says, people are destroyed. My people were destroyed for lack of knowledge, because they rejected his knowledge and his wisdom and truth. they rejected it again for the lust of the flesh and following after false gods. You know, Moloch and Baal, and you know they were, you know, worshiping them, and at this point, you know, it's Israel. You know, at this point in their history, they had a civil war after Solomon died, and they broke apart. You know, there was the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. So Hosea is talking to the people of Israel because they're right at the, you know, right on the brink of being taken, you know, taken over and led out into captivity and dispersed. And he's, you know, telling them how they, you know, played the harlot. And when it's talking about playing the harlot or being a whore, they were going after these false, you know, they left the true Elohim and went after these other Elohim, you know, with the lower G gods, went after them and was worshiping them. And so he even, you know, he told Hosea to go marry a prostitute and to have these children. And they named, you know, and they were named that you're not my people. One of them's name meant you're not my people anymore. And the other one was something like, you know, I'm going to cast you out, you know. And so that's what happened to them. You know, because again, like I said, they were, you know, given a special commission, and they rejected it. Out of all the people in the world, they had, you know, the knowledge of Elohim. They had his truth. You know, they had the Torah. They had the prophets. They had, you know, the historical books and stuff to give them this knowledge and understanding about how everything happened and, you know, where they were at in history and how they got there. But they rejected it. And so he says, I will raise up a people who will honor me and who will receive my knowledge. And you know, raise up a nation that will obey, and he, you know, he's, you know, and the nation of, you know, Israel, the Israel of Elohim is not genetic. It's not some country. It's a spiritual kingdom. It's a spiritual kingdom, and it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is or what your race is or what your gender is. If you keep his commandments and the doctrine of Christ, and you're born again into the spiritual kingdom, then you're in the Israel of Elohim. You're in that. And, you know, but see, these people didn't understand that, and they didn't get it. That it ain't, you know, an ethnic kingdom. It's not a ethnic or national thing. It's a spiritual thing. But they didn't get it. They didn't get that. It went over their head, and it's because it's not because they wasn't smart people. It's because that they had these lusts for things of the flesh, and so that was what was more important to them, and they went after that. And listen to these, you know, these false gods and all that stuff. And of course, it led to their ultimate being enslaved and dispersed around, you know, and their country taken away from them, you know. And then it ultimately happened to Judah as well, you know, when they were led into captivity into Babylon. Same thing, you know, they fell into apostasy and idol worship and everything else. And they let the temple structure go, you know, go into decline. And basically just said, you know, I'm done with y'all, and he left. You know, his, you know, the ruach left. And all right, we got another verse here. This is in Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 14. For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of Yahuwah as the waters cover the sea. And This is that knowledge. And it's been being spread all over the world. So, people are going to be without excuse. They can't say that knowledge and it's going to, the knowledge and the revelation of the knowledge and the opportunity to know it is going to be even greater as time goes on, because we're coming to the end of it. We're coming to the end, and especially during the tribulation, there's going to be 144,000 of elect people that will be sealed with the seal of Elohim, and they will go throughout the world proclaiming the gospel of Yahushua and giving everybody the opportunity to repent and to be saved. And it says he'll plead with them. Okay? And you'll also have the 2 witnesses that will be over there in Israel that will, because that's his land. That's the Father's land. He chose that for himself. And, he owns it all, the whole world is his. But he chose that little place there to be like his little special place. And so these witnesses are going to come there and be witnessing to the remnant of the people, the true Jews. Now, some of them over there ain't true Jews. They're of the synagogue of Satan, the Zionists. But it'll be a witness to them. And some people believe it's either Enoch and Elijah or Moses and Elijah. I don't know, and I don't really think it makes much difference, but they're going to be there witnessing and proclaiming this. And so, because the Father doesn't want anybody to perish. He tells us that over and over again. It's not his will that anybody should perish. It's our choice. He gives us the option and the choice to make. So the final decision as to which, side that we're going to be on and who we're going to serve. Because you got no choice in the matter as far as you're going to serve one or the other. It's just that way. But why would you want to serve the one that leads to death? Spiritual death, the final death, the second death. Why would you want to choose that? Choose Elohim and live. Choose Yahushua and live. And man, we can imagine, what it's going to be like. New heaven, new earth. And all the former things are passed away, and behold, all things have become new. I mean, we just have no imagination. We cannot imagine what it's going to be like. It's going to be glorious and wonderful. And why wouldn't you seek that? Why would you want to be destroyed? For lack of knowledge. And the knowledge is right here. It's right here, readily available. I don't understand it. Okay, we're going to go here to Luke. This is Luke chapter 1. It says, to give knowledge of salvation unto his people by the remission of their sins, through the tender mercy of our Elohim, whereby the day spring from on high has visited us. Talking about Yahushua, Christ. He visited us. The Father's mercy. I mean, that's why he came. That's why he came here. That was the ultimate pouring out of the Father's mercy. To send his own Yahid, his own special heir, down here to suffer a horrible death in a physical body to redeem us and to reveal this truth, this knowledge. And so, why people reject it when it's there, I mean, and